Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Fikrat, and today our discussion will be around data ingestion questions from on-premises sources using Data Factory service that is part of Microsoft Fabric. So here's a quick preview of the topics that I'm going to cover. So we will start with architecture questions. I'll explain what components and the services needs to be in place for data ingestion from on-premise. Then we'll move to more advanced configuration. So I'll explain high availability and the load balancing options for um, data gateway that is essential part of any ingestion from on-premises. Next, I want to explain a demo so that so we'll build pipeline that will ingest from Microsoft SQL and the local folder on virtual machine. Then we will move on to configure a firewall, which should allow you traffic, outgoing traffic from data gateway to cloud. And then we will learn how to install and configure data gateway. Next, we are going to configure access to local resources. Then we'll configure data gateway on Microsoft Fabric side. Then we'll create connections. Then we will build pipelines to ingest data from Microsoft SQL using Dataflow Gen2. Finally, we'll be ingesting files from local file system using data pipelines. Quick reminder for those who are new to the channel, please take a moment and subscribe so that you could always receive latest videos from my channel. Okay, so let's get started. So let's take a look at overall architecture of ingestion. If you have ever built pipeline between cloud services, you know that it's easy. All you need to care about is your credentials, access, and authorization. Things are a little different when you have ingestion from on-premise sources. So in order for cloud services to talk to on-premise, you need to have few intermediate components. This is diagrams that I have borrowed from Microsoft sites. Here we have some typical Azure services like Power BI, Power Automate, or Microsoft Fabric. And at the bottom, we have few on-premise sources like databases or files. And as you can see from here, there are few components like on-premises data gateway that is typically sitting on one of the computers on premises. And then you need to have service from cloud side. So that's called gateway cloud service. And then you need to have a service that will be responsible for delivering all this information, so ensuring this communication between these two parts. So that's called Azure Relay when it comes to Azure. Communication between these two parts are usually two-way. Cloud services send credentials and commands that needs to be run on premises, and then as a result of these commands, this data gateway from on-premise sites receives all this data from on-premises and pushes them to cloud. This information is also needs to be encrypted so that you could have secure communication. there are few data movement tools within the Microsoft Fabric. That's a data pipeline and the Dataflow Gen2 that we have discussed in the past videos. Here are some configuration details for data gateway. In order for this communication to happen, you need to open outbound ports on your local firewall. So I have listed these ports here. I will include a reference to website that includes all the detailed information. Let's talk about more advanced data ingestion scenarios. If you have on-premise data ingestion pipeline that is part of your critical infrastructure, you want to ensure that these pipelines are resilient to failure. So if you have a single data gateway that's sitting on one machine in your network, that can easily become a single point of failure. And to prevent that, you may use data gateway cluster. So this is what I am showing here on this diagram. So basically, that means that you can have more computers on your network, which will have their own data gateways, but these gateways will work in tandem. So the way it works, um, so only one gateway becomes active, and it will be responsible for all communication. But if for some reason this gateway is down or if this computer is down, then communication switch to alternative gateways. So that's called high availability configuration. And a second advanced option is called load balancing, which is more of performance feature, where you can distribute your traffic between your data gateways. Now, that distribution can be based on different criteria like CPU load or memory load. And the cluster will take care of smooth distribution of your traffic. So with that introduction, let's jump into the demo and see how it works. For the purpose of this demo, I have my virtual machine on Azure, which hosts Microsoft SQL Server. And inside that, I created a database. And then I have sample table. So I'm going to build pipelines that will ingest from this table. And as a second source, I'm going to ingest from local folders. So let me show the folders that I created here. So I have a couple of CSV files sitting in my data folder, and one of my pipelines is going to ingest from this folder. So let's talk about, so let's first start with the firewall configuration. Uh, I'll open my firewall, navigate to Outbound Rules tab, and we'll select New Rules button to create new rule. I'll select Port option, hit Next. We'll provide outbound ports that needs to be opened. Again, these ports are listed in the documentation, so Microsoft documentation that I will be including in this description of this video. So now I'll just paste these ports, hit next, select allow the connection, hit next, and name this rule. So I'll name it as for data gateway. I'll confirm. So my rule is in place. Okay, so next step in this process is to download and install Data Gateway. I'll provide a link for that as well in my video description. And the installation is very easy. So let me walk you through that installation process. So first we accept terms and the statement. Next, we'll need to provide email address for sign-in purposes. So that email address needs to be part of Microsoft Office. I would recommend using same accounts that you are using to log into your cloud services. That will make configuration easy. Next, I'm just going to confirm this. And so I'll say register a new gateway and hit next. I'll need to name this gateway. I'll name it as gateway. I need to provide recovery key and confirm. So that completes the configuration of data gateway. Let's take a quick look at different pages of this tool. So we can see that there are few services and for which this gateway is open, and we can see that gateway status. So that's good. So we have ready status. And if I select service settings, we have buttons to restart service, which may be useful for some troubleshooting scenarios. Um, and then diagnostic tab allows you to export your logs, which will contain logs of all communication to your cloud. Um, we have some other page that are secondary importance. I'll close this. And let's talk about now data access. So in order for data gateways to access your data sources, you may need to create accounts for that, local accounts for that. So when it comes to SQL Server, there might be different connection options or authentication options. You may choose basic authentication, which will require providing username and password, or you may choose Windows authentication, which means that you will need to create some local account and grant access to that. Um, Granting access to SQL is beyond this video, beyond the scope of this video. But I'll just show the accounts that I have created for that. So if I navigate to security, on the logins, I have created this login, so which represents basic authentication. So I provided username and password for that, and that login is mapped to user. It's called Fabric user, which we can use for communicating to pipelines. Okay, now that we have installed data gateway on on-premise side, let's take a look at a cloud side. So I'm in Microsoft Fabric, and the first thing to do is to check my data gateway status. And I can do that by navigating to settings at top right corner, and then from there selecting manage connections and data gateways. Then I'll navigate to on-premise data gateways, which will show me the gateways that I have created. So I'll click status button to show my gateway status. So it shows online. That means that my service is good. Now, to create pipeline, in order to create pipeline, you need to have connections, as you know. So you can create connections from this tab using new button, or you can create connection from your data flow directly. I'm gonna select the second option. So I'll navigate to home and from here, as you can see, I have data factory selected, and I'm gonna create Dataflow Gen2. So my first pipeline is gonna ingest from SQL. Is easiest way to ingest from Microsoft SQL is to use import from SQL Server option. And here I'll need to provide my server and the database details. I'll select create new connection, and we need to select data gateway. And from here, I have different authentication options. So the first option that I'm going to demonstrate is basic option. I am going to provide my credentials. Hit next. Okay, so now we are presented with table screen, and I can select my table, hit create, and that brings my data source to my data flow. One thing to mention here is that in order to be able to connect using basic authentication, your local server, SQL Server, needs to be configured appropriately. So let me just quickly show how to do that. So if I open my server, so this is my SQL instance properties. If I open properties and go to security, by default, your SQL instance is configured to receive only Windows authentication. So this option will be chosen. But if you are intending to connect using basic authentication, you can also use this one, and make sure that you restart your instance after that. Okay, now before moving to file sources, let me quickly show alternative way of connecting using Windows authentication. So I'll go to SQL again. I'll repeat my settings. But we'll choose Windows authentication here. So with this, I need to provide my local user details. So in this case, I'm going to use um, account which has full permissions on this database. So this is the login that I created. That's local account. So I'm gonna provide that account name, username, and the credential password. Hit next. And from here, the configuration is pretty much the same. All right, now let's add another data source, this time for my file sources. I'll navigate to get data, select, go open more option, and then from here I'll enter folder. Then I'll need to provide my path. Again, it's important that I select data gateway here, and here I'm going to select Windows authentication and basically provide my credentials again. So this account is admin account. I know that it has permission to read from that folder, but in case you choose another account, make sure that account has permission on that account on that folder. I'll confirm my selection, and that creates folder data source in my data flow. Okay, now that we learned how to use Dataflow to ingest from SQL and file sources on premise. Let's explore another option which is available within the Fabric. So I'm gonna navigate to home page. But let me first close this. Okay, so from home page, I'm gonna use new button and select data pipeline this time. I should say that I played with this tool and wasn't able to find ways to ingest from on-premise. I am assuming that given that Microsoft Fabric is still in preview, Microsoft is going to add that functionality because it used to be part of Data Factory for a long time. So I'm in data pipeline. So I'm gonna use copy data from here, which should open wizard. I will navigate to data sources. And the first thing to notice here is that there is no file data source here. So if I open file, we have different cloud options, but I don't see local file option. Again, it's most likely will be added soon. If I try to ingest from SQL, I will use database. So we'll select SQL Server, which is the right selection for on-premise SQL. We'll hit next, and I'll click create new connection. I'll provide my server details. So one thing to notice here, there is no gateway option here. So without providing gateway, Microsoft Fabric has no ways of identifying right server. I tried this basic option, but wasn't able to connect. So I'll come back to this option sometimes later and see if that's available within data pipeline. So that concludes today's lesson. To summarize, we discussed different components and services that are required to bring data from on-premise data sources. We also build pipelines based on Dataflow Gen2 to bring data from Microsoft SQL Server and the file system. Um, Feel free to post your questions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in next videos.